Good evening, Canby, and welcome to another riveting session of Budget Committee for the 2023-2024 budget cycle. As the past chair, I will get us started by calling this meeting to order and doing a roll call of Budget Committee members here, and we will start with Michelle. Just read your name, say your name into the mic.
Michelle Hensley, citizen.
Sean Barwig, City Council.
Lisa Potter, citizen.
Jim News, City Council.
Jack Pendleton, citizen.
Tracy Hensley, council president.
Brian Hodson, City.
Man.
Eric Art, citizen. How you say?
Jason Padden, City Council.
Liz Chapin, budget committee member.
Scott Sassy, citizen.
Eileen Steins, interim city administrator.
Joseph Lindsay, city attorney.
Eric Nicola, finance director.
And then directors, if you would, please.
And J.P. Sickle, Economic Development Director.
Jerry Nelsey, City of Canby, Public Works Director. Jeff Snyder, Public Works Supervisor.
Don Hardy, Planning Director.
Paul Letterman, Neighborhood Administrator.
Danny Smith, library and IT director. George Strode, chief of police.
Heidi Muller, transit coordinator.
Todd Wood, transit fleet director.
Eric Lightman, aquatic manager.
Excellent. Thank you very much. You wouldn't know it, but we've been practicing that for months. Just as a reminder, be sure that when you wish to talk, that your green light means go. That is a constant stumbling block of mine. So if someone will catch you if you haven't done it, and they'll make sure that you know. So with that, we will go ahead and start with new business with the election of a budget committee chair. And I will open up the floor for nominations for budget committee chair. Councilor Barwick.
Mr. Chair, I would like to nominate Scott Sassy as budget chairman.
I will second that nomination. I was going to suggest that you've done a great job, but now that you're counselor, I prefer to see a citizen be chair. So I would hope that Mr. Sassy would accept that role.
I completely agree. Mr. Sassy, would you accept the role as budget committee chair?
Talk about getting hung out to dry. I mean, can we not get maybe a year into this before?
Nah.
What about Jack?
I already tried that.
What do
You
I
don't,
have
you
to-
don't have to.
What do I have to do?
So you essentially need to make sure that everything stays on the rails. And it usually means creating a parking lot of items to follow up on. And, you know, that's,
Assistance?
normally you just go with the flow. There's no like vice chair.
Yes, there actually
Well, there
is.
is a vice chair, but normally the vice chair just
Hi.
fills in until you like pass out
I
or
guess.
are unable to
We'll
make
get-
it.
we'll
Scott,
get-
you'll do great. We'll make sure you do.
We'll give it a whirl.
Okay, so
do need to vote on that, though.
Scott has accepted. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Are there any abstentions? None noted. The motion carries. And Mr. Sassy is now the chair.
I know
So-
where you all live too, so.
Yes, and so now you will pick up with item B, which is the election of a budget committee vice chair.
So you just announced that is the next thing on the agenda.
So next is the elect budget committee vice chair. Do we have any nominations?
I'll nominate Mayor Hodson.
Mayor Hodson, do you accept?
Oh,
the
wait,
nomination?
I'm sorry. He cannot actually be that.
Nope.
He can do that for urban renewal, but not for the city. I apologize. He's not eligible.
So do I have to appoint one then?
No, we just wait
Nobody
for
steps
somebody to
forward?
nominate.
I'll make a nomination for Eric Arndt.
I would have to respectfully decline.
Sounds good. Well, then I would make a nomination for Michelle Hensley.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, Michelle Hensley nominated for elect budget committee vice chair. Next would
We
be.
gotta vote.
We got to vote on it.
Oh, vote.
All those,
You'll have this by the end of the
Okay.
meeting.
Yeah.
all those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0.
6. Okay, the chair doesn't have to be able to count,
Thank you.
even though it's the budget committee.
On to receive budget message.
receive the budget message would be, who's,
Eileen
oh, Eileen's going to do that.
Yes, I am going to do it very briefly. I have not had a chance to review the budget between being appointed last night and today. I have reviewed it a little bit, but I would feel more comfortable in having Joe Lindsay present the budget message. So I am deferring to Joe, and then we'll have Eric lead the process through going through the budget item by item or fund by fund. So with that.
Thank you. So, good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the Budget Committee, and new chair. This budget message is presented in paper form on pages 2 through 5, and it barely reaches 5. I'm not going to read it line by line, but what I am going to do is point out that that is part of the actual record, and that the highlights of this budget are that the city has worked to try to bring you a balanced budget that is fiscally responsible. And that's a question for you guys to go ahead and put the screws to if you want. But it is for $44.4 million, which is a little more than last year's budget. The budget itself has a general fund, I believe, of $24.7 million. Is that? No, $24.8 million. The rest are capital projects and one-time expenses that end up adding another $17.8 million to come up with that $44.4 million. So it is a little bit inflated from last year at about 8%. And that's due to costs in labor and materials, and then also because we're trying to add some additional personnel and get some projects, some that we didn't do last time around, and so they're carrying over, and some that we are in midstream and they're carrying over, and the expenses are carrying over with them. What I did this year in trying to kind of prepare this message in part was to ask our directors to brag a little bit about how they spent last year's money, because you guys allocated money for them to spend. And so what we have is a bullet point list of some of the great kind of brags that each department has in the way in which the money was spent, and I think in earnest and then also responsibly. So if we start with the police department, we'll see that bullet point says that they kept up with vacant positions. So people were actually retiring, and they were having to hire and fill those positions, and so they actually they recruited for one new position, they kept up with retirement positions, and they did that by hiring 3 lateral officers, which is a nice bang for your buck, because you get people who already have been through the training process. And so when you hire lateral folks, you don't have to put them through the academy or pay for that or their field training. So that is, I think, is a bragging right, along with the idea that they successfully added a behavioral health specialist who has really hit the ground running and has been able to respond to all sorts of mental health crises in our community, and has been a super asset and helped train even our staff in behavioral health sort of issues like de-escalation and workplace safety and such. So it's been a nice addition, and so thank you for budgeting that last year. They also wanted to brag about the fact that they held the 2nd annual Grill and Chill, which actually had over 500 folks attend. They also added, because of your guys' choice last year, a sergeant position so that they have more around-the-clock supervision. They were excited about that, and that has happened. With that, they've seen actually an increase, 51% in calls for service that are non-traffic related. So they're doubling their responses to the community, and so that service is really being utilized. And so you guys have some real world, service-oriented ramifications that are very positive for the city. So thank you. They also were able to get through the state accreditation process, and we presented them with, or they were actually presented from the accreditation, a nice plaque showing that they actually passed a rigorous process that allows them to be accredited. And finally, they implemented body-worn cameras at an expense that you guys authorized, and that has helped kind of follow best practices and leading towards the future of police work, especially in the state of Oregon. So as I go through this, I just want to make sure and highlight some of these brags for the rest of the departments, and I'll speed it up a little bit because I know we have, you guys want to get to the actual numbers, but our planning department is, the council goals as of recent have really highlighted our planning department. And what our planning department is trying to do is get to those goals. And they're lofty ones. They're long-range planning goals like the comprehensive plan, and that entails a transportation system amendment as well, and eventually a UGB expansion, an urban growth boundary expansion. And part and parcel to that is economic needs analysis and housing needs analysis. And so those are all very pricey and sophisticated endeavors. And so we got launched on that this last year, again, in part to the decision of the budget committee to go ahead and bless that. It is going to be a 3-year process. And what we'll see is a bigger share of that is coming in year 2. Because they didn't start off right away in the first fiscal year. So this year you're going to see, I believe it's $440,000 if I'm looking for this year. So that's something that the planning has done. Another deal that planning I wanted to brag about, and I think it's important to show, is that the staffing, even though in part they have a crew that really works really hard and actually it stays super busy, they were also able to join in other communities in riding the state and objecting to some of the I-205 tolling. And I think part of their adding on to that has helped in kind of at least postponing that. Public Works has all sorts of stuff going on. They completed a full street reconstruction, Northeast 4th to Northeast 10th on North Locust Street. They've upgraded the sewer main on North Locust. They've upgraded all the storm system on North Locust. They've constructed a new pickleball court, which is very popular and well used, and was open to, I think, much fanfare. This last fiscal year. They actually aided, along with the planning department, in the adoption of the Parks Master Plan, which is a culmination of a couple years' work. And they're continuing to move forward and on the Walnut Street extension, which is going to be an important arterial for our industrial park to go out to 99E without jamming up traffic near Fred Meyer. So we're excited about that. The library used funds last year to hire a new library manager as well as a children's librarian. They've completed time and motion studies to improve efficiencies. They've completed workflow and process analysis and materials and movement fulfillment and fulfillment. They've made multiple ergonomic improvements to help staff in the back room area to help reduce repetitive motion injuries and increase efficiency. And then they've completed a comprehensive analysis of the library collection and created new processes for focusing on efficiency and getting materials out to library customers as quickly as possible. Our swim center actually had their main bust. Some people know this, some people don't, but they had very little disruption to their service while they were able to repair that. So that was a great expense. They are looking forward to eventually renovating part of that swim center as well. And they also were happy to report that they were getting all second grade swimmers in for lessons this year, and they aided in a new level of success for the Canby High School swim team as well as the Canby Gators. Economic Development created and launched a pilot community small grants program while continuing to plan and implement for large scale events like Light the Night and 4th of July, which continue to actually, I think, break attendance records, along with Canby's Big Weekend and for the First Thursdays, and the inaugural Shop Local campaign, which also I think saw some success. And our new IT department completed its city-wide conversion of Microsoft 365, replaced servers at City Hall, upgraded critical software systems, upgraded the infrastructure between CAT and Canby Area Transit, and the rest of the city locations upgraded and implemented a VPN citywide, created a data backup and disaster recovery plan, added long-term backup cloud storage, consolidated copier leases, and upgraded the conference room technology. Court is still in the process of transitioning out of criminal prosecution, so that is ongoing as well, and trying to transition out of its criminal caseload. CAT added circular route and Saturday services, and our HR is nearly complete on a full-scale classification and compensation study. I think it's important to kind of let you guys know. I remember as a teacher when somebody gave a gift to the teacher, it was nice to say what we spent the money on. And so the money that you guys allocated got spent well. With that, we are going to be asking for the installation, and we asked for this last year, but we didn't get to it, was the installation of 2 electric car charging stations in the city-owned parking lot next to the movie theater. A project carried over from last year. We're trying to budget for the reconstruction of Northeast 4th at the Canby Train Museum to help that congested intersection there at Pine and the Canby Train Museum. And installation of new dry well at North Maple Street to eliminate flooding issues. Public Works is also proposing a project manager position because we have a lot of projects, the wastewater, and also all of these projects coming up in accordance with our transportation system plan. There's also an ask for a part-time Parks and Rec professional position in line with the Parks Master Plan. There's going to be an additional or a proposed additional full-time park maintenance position to align also with the recommendations and the use of the park maintenance fee. The finance department is taking on a full-time position from administration to increase efficiencies at the front counter. The PD proposes to take the current hybrid position of code enforcement and the evidence tech position and make a full-time code enforcement and a full-time evidence tech because of those body-worn cameras, and also so that we can increase our code enforcement in town. They have successfully implemented the body-worn cameras, but the full effect of that evidence is still looming, and so those have to be produced for prosecution and for evidence purposes. And then finally, our city recorder is proposing a new program to better track committees, boards, and commissions along with the goals of the council. Planning is proposing a work session for housing code efficiency measures, and they, of course, are looking to continue all that long-range planning that we talked about, and working towards a urban growth boundary expansion and the transportation system amendments. So those are all lofty goals for this year, and that's a huge part of what we're asking for. And of course, we want to maintain our staffing levels that we have in all of our other departments so that we can continue to give services at the same level and increase those where those increased personnel are going to be landing. Chair? Yes.
I would like to propose that, considering this is your first time on the city budget committee, and you've now been chosen as chair, which congratulations, would the members of the committee be willing to let me have a quick chat with Scott about like the parking lot items and some of those things that the budget committee is used to seeing, so that he doesn't feel like he's being thrown to the wolves? Would that work for folks?
Sure.
Okay.
Take a 5-minute recess.
Could we take, I'd like to propose that we take like a 3-minute recess?
Works for me.
Mr. Chair, could we take a
works.
3-minute recess?
That works.
Okay,
Let's get her done.
okay.
Recording stopped.
Welcome back, Canby, to the City of Canby Budget Committee meeting, and Mr. Lindsay has a question.
Yeah, well, I just had one more fact to add that I'd missed in the budget message statement that I made, which is I was reminded by our esteemed colleague back there, the chief of police, that they are actually asking for one position because of the increase in calls. And so that's also in this budget. Okay. Otherwise, that's essentially the message, and we're hopeful that this process will be smooth sailing, and we can get through and actually fine tune it and get it right.
Thank you, Joe. Next, review the 2023-24 proposed budget, starting with general fund, and that would be Eric.
Thank you. First, let's see, I want to apologize for this PDF is, there's errors in it. Some of the narratives at the back near the sewer department and for the facilities are last year's narratives, and then the facilities budget is actually not the right one. It's last year's budget numbers that are in there. I'm really sorry about that. There's a few other things. One of the capital projects that was approved by Scott to put in the budget didn't get in the budget, and that's the fuel station that's at $1 million that would be spread between 5 funds: streets, parks, wastewater treatment plant, collections, and stormwater. And I noticed another error in the streets department, North Pine Street alignment. Jerry and I had talked, and we changed the number to be $1,650,000, but the capital improvement form that's turned in, that's signed, is only $850,000. So I either need to get a signature with a correction on it, or we got to change that number to $850,000. So I would like to make corrections on this and bring it to the next council meeting, but I think we can work through it if you guys are okay with that.
The next
tonight.
budget meeting? You
What's
mean?
that?
The next budget meeting next week, not the next council meeting?
Correct, budget
Okay.
meeting, sorry. And I noticed the page numbers are messed up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm looking for page 53 and realized that's way far.
There's all
beyond.
kinds of page 53s in there.
Goodness sakes.
Sorry about that.
Chris, that's it. I know there's some questions.
We have a question, Lisa Potter.
Yes, and I also noticed the CIP for the Parks Department didn't get transferred in here. It looks like an old budget, but the approved CIP isn't reflected in this budget either.
Let's see.
Page 36.
Okay. Yeah, that one I have labeled at the top that it wasn't updated for this budget. When I started working on that this week is when I found some of the capital project issues.
Okay.
And so I actually need to work with Jerry and make sure that we're on the same page with that, but I plan to have that updated and in here for the next meeting.
And Jack, you have next?
Yeah, I had some more questions because a lot of the ones on page 36 don't match the numbers that are over in the narratives. So are the numbers over in the narratives the correct ones?
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. The CIP schedule is just the one from last year I left in as a placeholder.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I just want to say something about the timing. This year, if you guys remember last year, the audit didn't get done until June, and we did the budget. Obviously, it was all done and adopted before the audit was done. This year, we worked super hard and got the audit done 3 months earlier, but it left me only 6 weeks to get the budget done. So I was hustling to try to get this stuff done. Not an excuse, but that's what was happening.
Any other questions for administration? On to human resource risk management.
Oh,
Wait.
actually, I don't think we.
We haven't gone through the administration.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
What is it actually on here? It's not 53.
It's like halfway through the document. Jamie's got it pulled up on the screen, if you guys can see it. It's got the budget detail. And then it's got admin and the narrative. The next page will be the actual expenditures being requested by admin. It's about halfway through the packet.
Just past 56.
Yeah. My page 56 says human resources.
Yeah, all the page numbers I noticed are no good. So if you go back one page from there, it should be admin.
Okay, 53 and 4, okay.
So I didn't give an okay to update the budget and bring it to the next budget meeting. Is that okay? To update the budget document?
I think that would be important.
Are we wasting our time tonight, I'm
Do
wondering?
did we take a poll on who, if we wanted him to bring back?
Yeah.
I would prefer a budget that's real.
Yeah, your page 54 is different from my page 54.
Oh, good grief. Yeah, are we, what are we doing here tonight?
Just a second, okay. Scott, if I may, I understand that the budget is not particularly clean, okay? And with you know, we still need to let the chair do their job. I don't want to see this whole process come off the rails, okay? If I may, I feel that we can work through these problems. And I'm going to help Scott make sure that people stay on task, okay? Because this is his first year doing it. That if folks have a problem with that, you let me know now. But already there are some folks that are starting to take this off the rails, and I just want to make sure that we try and make our way through this, because in reviewing the budget, I think a lot of it is actually in place, and we can make our way through this and not make this whole process a theater, okay?
I don't think asking for an accurate budget is off the rails.
I don't think it is either,
Mr.
but.
Chair.
Yes, Councilor
Thank you.
Hanson.
I don't have a problem with you being chair. I'm happy you are chair. The way the meeting is being run, I don't have a problem with. I'm having a problem with this document and the lack of organization in it and the lack of it being accurate and current. I'm wondering if we're wasting our time tonight. That was an honest question, Councilor Patton.
Questions? Michelle?
It's not, well, it's kind of a question. Like, what do we need to have in place for next year for us to make sure that we have an on-time, accurate budget? Like, if we're struggling in here, what is our community struggling with, right? Like, they need to be able to understand it, and having multiple different versions and not updated numbers that tie to anything, that's difficult.
The numbers are right on the sheets. I know the numbers are correct. The page numbers are not correct, and some of the narrative is not correct. What do we need to do to make sure this doesn't happen next year is we need to get the budget done sooner, or the audit done sooner at the end of December, so I have 3 months to work on the budget and not 6 weeks. So I've already scheduled the auditors to start in July of this year. So we're already working at getting more time for the budget prep next year.
Question, Mayor Hudson.
I know that as a mayor, from the charter standpoint, I don't have much of a say really, but I just think that, I just want to confirm, Eric, that we can proceed because the numbers that you will be talking about and referencing, we're good to go on.
Absolutely.
We just got to clean up some of the narrative pieces and whatnot so that it's just a better baked product before it goes out to the community.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The numbers that are in these schedules are correct except for one.
Councilor Barber.
Eric, you mentioned there's a few places where that $1 million split up between several departments is not in the budget. So we need to make sure that we know when we get to those departments,
Yes.
that there's a $200,000 per department
Yes.
error in this budget, and you'll help us correct that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Yeah, when I'm looking at my copy of the budget here, on one page 53, I've got general fund administration, then I've got the requirements after that. But then back over here, there's another page for general fund requirements. And which one should I get rid of?
Well, I mean, the content that's on these pages is correct and it's in the correct order, but all the page numbers are wrong. I don't know how the page numbering got all messed up.
Okay, so beginning on.
We should be on 54.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I want to start. We're going to start at the beginning of the general fund, the budget detail.
So these numbers.
Those are numbers we're looking at. I'm just
Okay.
putting the
Hey,
rest.
okay.
Yeah.
That's correct. I'll walk around and check everyone's. You got it? Yes.
It's like a teacher checking homework.
Yeah.
The second page 53.
Right here.
And he's got notes in this merger. He's
No, I
got the right
understand
page.
that. I think that Jack is at the most current version of it last year.
I only sent one out.
I know, but mine sent out the second version.
As a URA.
It was just the draft, the draft watermark. Yeah, Jack, this is what we're
Okay, so these numbers are back
Okay,
here.
got it.
These numbers I don't have to, I get it.
That's just, that's like that's an overarching the whole budget.
Yeah, you got it. Yes. Yep, yeah.
So I think the PDF, so like that says on the PDF, if you have your computer and it says page 59 for the PDF at the top, that is common in the one that I have.
It's hard enough when it's organized.
Huh?
It's hard enough when it's organized. Now, what do I say when we get back? Now we're continuing.
Okay, we're just gonna go in order, so as long as we stay on the page, and Jamie will keep us on what we're looking at. Again, my apologies. Okay, administration, does everyone feel like they're on the right page? Okay. Administration, this department provides a number of direct and support services, including overall day-to-day management operations for the city organization, city council by the city administrator. Additional responsibilities of the department include the office of the city recorder, the legal counsel to the mayor, and city council through the office of the city attorney. The 2023 highlights are continue to improve the volunteer application process, manage city committee databases and appointment processes, process city election for the city council and mayor positions. 24 goals are to implement the adopted goals of the mayor and city council, complete implementation of the new volunteer application, and assist other city departments with records management. Let's turn the page. So in admin, there's an overall change, basically decreasing the admin requirements from last year's budget to this year's budget by 151,000 decrease. A large part of that is due to the FTEs, the employee number going from 3.9 to 2.9. What that is the person that works the front desk upstairs was an admin, but they got moved to the finance department, so that full-time position is moving to finance. The other big decrease was in materials and services under professional technical services. Last year, there was a consultant hired at the consultant was at 108,500, but all the professional services last year was 108, but this year it's only 8,500. And then down in supplies and services, you can see that there's a large increase down there. Last year it was like 7,000 and this year it's 42,000. Any questions for admin or for me?
Counselor Davis?
Thank you. The question on mayor and council, 12,000 to 17,370, the increase?
Let's see, mayor and council. Maya's not here, but isn't that for some travel training?
That is for the opportunities of League of Oregon Cities and those sorts of things, so that we have enough money in there if people want to attend conferences.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't have to be spent, but the idea is to try to leave enough money in there to give everybody that opportunity.
Okay. So when we recommend a change, can we recommend a change? This is the first time.
Or the parking lot?
No, I have a similar question, Mr. Chair. Mayor and City Council, we've increased it from 12,120 to 17,370. However, the next line item is council travel and training, so I'm feeling like it's in the wrong category, that increase.
Oh, I see.
The mayor and city council, I believe, to only have been our stipends were included in that, and then the council training and travel is that next line item, so I'm feeling like maybe it's in the wrong place. Oh, I'm pulling adjacent, thank you.
Would you repeat all that, please?
I can if you'd like me to, but I believe everybody heard me.
I'd like to recommend that we keep that at 12,000.
So would that go into the parking lot?
Yes. So normally in the past, like when we've had recommendations like that, we make a note of it.
Okay.
And then get down through things, and then we haven't usually made a lot of changes to the numbers as we go, but that's something that we would put down, normally we would put down revisit.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind revisiting that, because I would like to know, the methodology behind increasing it by 5,000, but I would also like to discuss putting it in the right category. So parking lot is a good spot.
Yeah, my button. Oh my gosh. And if I may, a lot of times, like, I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds by helping him. Like, you might put that there, and that might be something that they could research to see why that number is different, go back to their notes.
I'm putting in a note down, the mayor council, the cost was 12,120 last year, this year to 17,370.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? Okay.
Okay, Jamie, will you move it to HR, Human Resources? Okay, Human Resources and Risk Management. The Human Resources Department provides personnel support for all city employees.
I wanted to ask another question at this point.
23 highlights include processing 26 recruitments, processing 21 FMLA, OFLA requests, implementing a new HR software to create efficiencies and modernization of the performance evaluation process. 24 goals are to fill vacancies that may result from employee retirements or other separations, and to schedule training opportunities for employee health, safety, development, and general information. And we can turn over to the budget portion if no one has questions.
Yes, question.
Councilor Davis?
Sorry. Just for my knowledge, under wages, what are you anticipating wage increase for '24? Because we went from 122 to 177. Across the board, I was just kind of curious as to what the wage increases were going to be for the various departments.
I could try to answer that, which is the proposed budget in the earlier year had 1.7 people in it. And that was proposed to be at 165. We actually only have now, we're projected to have spent only 122 because of a decline in personnel. I think that is we've separated out, and we had a city recorder and a deputy city recorder, and so we don't, I believe that's that position.
Yeah.
And so.
But, yeah, I'm just across the board, Joe, I'm just asking, what did we figure in for the budget for wages?
The percentage.
Oh, in general?
Yeah, for the percentage.
I think those costs are 24.8 million in the general fund, is that what we're, I mean, with wages and benefits?
What percentage did wages go up this year over last year?
So we have 2 bargaining units, and the one bargained, we have a COLA that went up 4%. It's hard to answer entirely because with new hires, you can hire in at various steps. And so somebody might have left at a higher step and then somebody else got hired in at a lower step. So that might have actually seen some savings, but then other times folks who get hired in with a lot of experience might come at a slightly higher step if somebody quit at a lower step. But as far as like the actual positions, but across the board, our one group had a 4% COLA, and for this year in the police union, they had 2.5. That's the way they bargained that, and in the third year, they're gonna all be in a 2 to 4 window. So the maximum window was achieved because of the inflation rate of 4% for our ASME folks, if that helps. Okay, yeah.
Question, Counselor Hensley?
Thank you. Unless someone else has a question on human resources, I actually need to go back a page because I didn't get my hand up in time. I have a question on the admin page still.
Sure.
The professional and technical services 2023 budget, 108,500, and proposed is 8,500. Is that technical service, that consultant you talked about, is that our IT consultant or is that a different consultant?
No, was that the comp and class study? Is that what that was
The
called?
108,000?
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Okay.
was, our Troop was the company we went with to do a full classification and compensation study. And that is actually almost complete.
And that was just a one-time thing?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you, sorry, back to human resources now.
Mr. Chair.
Mayor
Hudson? Thanks. So knowing that the city council has a pretty extensive recruiting process of our own for the city manager process coming up here, and a bulk of that being in the new year.
Yeah.
Where is that being captured in this budget? Is that here in HR, or is that back in the previous fund?
That should be in administration, and that is so fresh that I would actually ask leave to make that a part of the new draft that you're going to see next time around, because I think you're right, that should be a cost that we put in there.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you for that reminder.
I'll try to be quiet from
Will
here.
that be
yeah.
expended in this year though, or next? I mean, this is next year's budget.
Yeah, the new budget year starts in July.
I know, but we're starting that process now.
Yeah, but we're not going to have a recruiter on until
We
the
wouldn't
new
be
year.
paying anything out until.
Correct.
Okay,
Can I just say something about that?
Yeah.
sure.
So in the general fund, there's a contingency fund, and the contingency is for unforeseen situations, right? So I think this would be an unforeseen situation, and usually you don't use the contingency fund. But if we got a person on to do the recruiting for the city administrator, we could use the contingency funds in the general fund.
So either way, we're covered. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So just for clarification, sorry, if you want it to be a known cost so that it's in the document, as opposed to just using a contingency fund and then doing a supplemental budget, we could bring back a line item that says consultant for hiring and put it at, say, 50,000 just in case. Would that be something you'd rather see, or?
If he's already reworking it to bring us a cleaner document next week, might as well have the
Okay, for
identified.
transparency's
I would
sake.
think, if everyone else agrees, I would prefer to have it identified.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so in the HR budget in 2023, the budget number was 971, and this year it's 912. There's the bulk of that reduction is from the materials and services, professional services line. Last year, there was a budget of 138,500 in there, and this year it's just 15,500. And I'm not sure what the professional services was in HR. Let's see. It says.
Yeah, because 22 to 23 is quite the jump.
Yeah, actually, it says on the budget detail for HR that they collaborated with consultants on the citywide classification, compensation, pay equity study. So
I thought that was the admin one.
Right, let's see what admin says.
Do we not have the human resource person here tonight?
No.
We do not.
She's not here.
No?
Yeah, and I'm sorry for that.
I can bring detail back on both of what those services were in those departments if you guys want.
Please.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to point out in here is that the liability insurance has gone from 426 last year to 490 this year. So that was in HR. Okay, will you go to the finance page? So the finance department manages the city's finances and provides financial information to the council, city administrator, and department directors. 23 highlights are that we added an online payment option through Express Bill Pay for business license customers to renew and pay their license fees on their own without having to call and get someone on the phone to do it. We added a real-time payment feature to the online sewer payments through Express Bill Pay. What this did was allow customers to pay their bill and then immediately see their balance change so that they weren't concerned that their bills weren't getting attributed to their account fast enough. So it's just a service for the customers. One of the big things that I'm really proud of is that the utility billing process manual was used to train a new employee and follow procedures when the UB clerk was on maternity leave. One of the issues I faced in finance when I first got in there was the lack of training materials. The utility billing one was a major one. Our utility billing clerk has made a training manual, a process manual that details her daily tasks, and it's probably like 100 pages long. I mean, it's very thorough. And when she went on maternity leave, she was able to train the new finance employee, and that person was able to do the utility billing for the weeks that the utility billing clerk was gone. And it's just great because no utility billing clerk will ever show up here and not have training materials ever again. So we're doing that with each position, but that one was really critical because she was out on maternity leave. One that's not listed on here, which I already said, was that we completed the audit 3 months earlier than last year. Our 24 goals are just a continuation of training for each finance department staff position. We would like I said, the admin department gave us, we took an employee from them, and that person is just going to focus on the front desk. Our extra employee that we got last year has been covering the front desk. She started in October, and by December, she was having to cover the front desk and was unable to back up the finance staff to allow us the cross-training that we've been really needing big time. So once that situation gets worked out, we'll have the additional staff member. We're not hiring a person, we just took one from admin, focus on the front desk, and finally get our new employee from last year to focus on allowing us to do cross-training and more of the process documentation and creating manuals. Creating process manuals for each position is another one of our goals. And also, which I mentioned before, to complete the audit by the end of December is one of our goals. And like I said, we've got the auditors slated to come in July. So right when the budget gets done, I'll be hitting the audit again and getting a head start.
Comment, Mr. Chair?
Counselor Davis?
Thank you. Would you mind changing complete the 22-23 audit to complete and present to the city council before submitting to the state the audit? And because the council is supposed to accept the audit, and make sure that we get the letter that was written to the city council and to the mayor before we submit to the state.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to that at all, but I just want to bring up, like, this year, we had turned into the Secretary of State that we had requested an extension to March 31st to turn the audit in, and we got it from the auditor like 2 or 3 days late. So my only concern with doing that is that if we don't get the audit in time to present it and get your okay before we turn in the audit could be late.
Thank you. But the letter from Grove Mueller was written on the 31st, and it was addressed to the mayor and city council. And we never received that letter.
Okay.
And by good practice audit, you're also supposed to have the council not approve it, but accept it.
Okay. I am adding that to the list here.
Eric?
Yeah, I just have one question on the bottom of that page that we were just covering. The 2024 budget shows cost to deliver financial services of 880,000. Seems a little lower than the 2024 proposed number on the previous page, which is 912,994. So I just want to, are those numbers supposed to be the same?
Where do you see
What?
that?
Different departments.
Well, we're,
Different departments.
oh, sorry. I'm disregard.
No.
Counselor Patton?
So at the meeting last night, one of the things that I noticed is that some of these tasks that the finance department is trying to accomplish, I imagine are eating up quite a bit of time of the staff and resources of the department. And I'm wondering if maybe we could put in the parking lot possibly budgeting for either a consultant or a subcontractor that can come in and help catch up on some of these more if you're building these manuals, is there a way to give someone the information and have them go through the process of drafting the manual and creating the actual manual so that your staff is able to then focus on doing the day-to-day tasks of the department?
Yeah.
Is one of the things that I think might be valuable to add to the parking lot for discussion later.
Just to answer that, like, our goal last year with the employee that we asked for was to do exactly that. And she only got 2 months of working for finance before she was sent to the front desk and not able to help us do that, so.
Well, and without getting into the weeds necessarily, there's certain matriculation and personnel matters that even if we budget for a certain number, sometimes folks are not, here for certain reasons or whatnot. And so that's also part of several of the department's challenges, I think, is keeping folks in the building and doing stuff, if that makes. I'm just trying, without making too much of a comment, but just also lending a little bit of that kind of factual reality on the ground.
Counselor Varwick?
Yeah, so I guess I'm just a little bit confused, and maybe you can help clarify, maybe Joe, you can help clarify for me. Why is a finance employee doing administrative tasks, not under the admin department? Why would we put a finance employee into an admin role?
Right, so this person that worked at the front desk was in admin.
Well, yeah, so just, I guess, without talking about the personnel too much.
Okay.
Different folks are in different circumstances in terms of, there was an attempt to recognize by the administration that the central tasks of the front desk person were primarily financial. So when there was a position that was asked for by the finance department, a lot of the duties were business licenses and actually answering the vast majority of the walk-ups we've discovered were for sewer bills and for all of that. So it actually was more of the idea of the front desk was actually, it seemed like almost all of the tasks were financial. So there was a strategy to fill the request with that position, and then admin would still get, I guess, the benefit of having a greeter. So if that kind of answers the question without talking about the
It
specifics
makes
of
it
it.
very muddy, and I'm just having a hard time approving a budget that a finance employee is doing finance plus admin.
Well, the
And-
admin work meaning the manuals, is that what you're thinking?
Well, I'm just thinking admin of greeting or, handling anything, emails, anything that's administrative that's not directly related to finance. If their tasks are only finance-related items, it makes sense. If their tasks are more than finance-related items, if you're saying that you have an employee that you can't utilize, that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, so just to answer the question, so if a person does primarily really financial duties, and yet they also were able to serve as the primary walk-up service, the whole notion there was the vast majority of people coming to get service was for utility billing and for business licenses, and those were finance functions. So the strategy was to make that an actual finance position, even though it is also housed as the front person. If the front person was only an administrative, and this is just the theory and why it got put in place, is that administrative person would have to go get the sewer billing person to come and take the sewer bill. So the idea was to just actually be more efficient, if that helps. But then there's been a situation where not, even if we are fully staffed in the budget, doesn't mean that we're fully staffed on the ground because of reasons that we can't really talk about. So part of the frustration is that on the ground, the staffing hasn't equaled what the budget is for reasons that are out of our control. So that the tasks aren't being done, but the budgeted position still exists, if that makes sense. It's different leaves and things like that.
Mayor Hudson?
I'll drop it. I mean, it seems very muddy to me, so I struggle with that. So I'll leave it at that.
Sean, I can say that this person, the person that came from admin would be mostly doing finance stuff, and we taking it on as the finance department for this extra person, I'm gonna fill them up with finance duties for sure. We have enough to give them, so.
I just don't want to be back in this position next year of going, we need another person, we need another person, we need another person, because they don't have time to do stuff that they're.
I don't think that will happen.
So that's just my.
I think this will be a big relief.
Thank you.
Mayor Hudson?
Thanks. So Eric, in your budget, you're asking for, this is kind of going back to Councilor Patton's question, you are asking and have added in another person for the finance team.
The position's being transferred from admin to finance.
Okay. So, but it's still a +1 to your department, yes? Okay. So with that being done, do you see the benefit and or the need of maybe bringing in contract help for a period of time?
I think if we had 5.8 employees working in finance, we would be fine.
Okay. But for right now,
We've had various.
we're at 3.5. No, I totally get, and you and Scott have been very forthright about some of that, people come and go. So we're in the process of growing to the 5.8. When we get there, so in the interim though of that gap, would it be beneficial to have that extra hands, I guess?
It's kind of really dependent on the timing of figuring out,
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think,
We just want to be able to,
I can't say what I would,
well, I guess the request is if we are reducing that in this budget from admin to finance, so that finance can have somebody who does finance tasks, and that is the on-paper dream.
Okay.
But in the reality on the ground is that various people have times in their lives or whatnot that, they're.
Sure.
Yeah, so.
Vacations occur, leaves, yeah, I get it,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, I mean, it's hard to keep everybody at 100%.
I got team members that take a month long vacation, I totally get it, yeah. So I just try, because I know that there's a litany of things that need to be done, and there's time constraints, and so if it's a manpower or people power issue, then I guess I'm trying to say to the administrative team leadership, Eileen, that if that's a decision that needs to be made, I want to make sure that this budget committee supports that we capture, if that's the plan, we capture it. If not, then we know that funding is in the contingency to be able to pay for that piece, so.
Right.
Okay.
If the budget committee is so willing to grant that kind of resource to the finance department, we appreciate it very much. Let us go back and figure out how much that is, if it is even needed, and we will report back at your next meeting.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's speedy, so. A lot of fish and fries.
I just want to say that the employee that we got in October is fantastic. She's super smart. She's catching on to things very quickly. So I know that when she gets.
But just be careful about, we don't want to get, and not that we just don't want to get in the business of evaluating employees.
Okay.
In the public, so just so we know.
When she gets kicked free from the front desk duties, she'll be able to plug into the finance duties and really start making a difference.
Counselor Penn.
So to clarify my ask, what I would say is, along Eileen's thread, ruminate on it, and then if you think it's something that you could utilize, how that would look, report back to us at the next meeting.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I have a question, Eric. Are all your employees here in the building, or is anybody remote working?
Let's see. We have remote workers.
Okay.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3. 3 people are remote.
And would that
There's a
help-
blend of.
Would that help if they were here more on hand?
No, a lot of, it might be counterintuitive, but sometimes when you're at home and there's no one distracting you, you can get a lot of stuff done.
Okay.
And everyone comes in portions of the week, so. And when I try to, keep the department man, so there's always people there.
Yeah. As a committee member, community member, the big thing in town is everybody wants people back in this building, period. So if they can work at home from a day or two, but the general consensus is they want them back in this building. So, moving on.
Any more questions in finance? Jamie, can you go to municipal court? Okay, the Canby Municipal Court is the judicial branch of the city government. Its mission is to provide a fair and impartial local forum for the resolution of all city traffic, parking, and code violations committed within the city limits. 23 highlights are that the municipal court saw a substantial increase in the amount of traffic citations cited to the court and processed by court staff. 24 goals are misdemeanor charges are no longer filed in the municipal court. The municipal court will continue to make an effort to streamline probation matters to clear the criminal dockets over the next year.
And the other line item that I would actually bring attention to on this one is down at attorney services, when we first proposed the removing the criminal caseload, that we pay for contract prosecutor and 2 contract defense attorneys. Over the course of that tapering off, it didn't taper off as fast as one would have wanted, although what happens in that the prosecution world is if things get set for trial, if things get set over for hearing or for sentencing or people don't show up and then they have to go into warrant status and they get picked back up, the numbers actually didn't taper down enough, so we limited or reduced the contract for the prosecutor because the numbers came down a little bit. We have to keep retaining defense attorneys. We are in the process of renegotiating those contracts for next year. So that number is very conservative in that we will be negotiating to bring down that number and entirely, try to bring it down to pretty much nil within about a year. So that is the hope. So that is the one piece of this that is a super conservative number, but I didn't want to tip over the apple cart before we actually renegotiate in the coming year for those attorneys.
So on the court budget sheet, under the court requirements, last year it was 435. This year it's just a little over 450, so a $15,000 increase, which is just related to the attorney services difference between the FY23 budget number of 44,000 and the 24 number of 79. Any questions? Can you go to the planning? Thank you, Jamie. Okay, the planning department works to maintain and improve the quality of the community and life of the citizens who live in the community through the provision of land use planning and development services. Planning has a lot of highlights and goals, but I'm only just going to hit a few of them. Don is here and he could.
Mr. Chair?
Do you want to?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was going to suggest we've got the department heads here. Let's let them present.
Good evening. I'm just going to give an overview of the planning department, and I'm happy to go through details on the budget as well. We're in pretty much a robust planning activities in the city right now. This is building upon the housing needs analysis, housing production strategy, and economic opportunity analysis grants we received from the Department of Land Conservation and Development. That work's continuing and it's dovetailing into the comprehensive plan work and the transportation system plan work, which have both started. The city has not done a lot of long-range planning, and the last comprehensive plan was up 38 years ago in 1984. The last transportation system plan was in 2010, so it's about 13 years ago. So there's not really a surprise that there is a lack of residential and industrial land, which was vetted out through the buildable lands analysis. That was part of the economic opportunity analysis and housing needs analysis evaluation work. We've started the comprehensive plan process. We have a consultant on board for that. That consultant was hired after selection. There was a full RFP in selection. There were 2 firms that submitted on that. This is about a 2-year process. It's anticipated that an urban growth boundary expansion will happen as part of this. Part of the buildable lands analysis work is indicating that for residential, we're probably looking at somewhere between 50 and 112 acres of residential land expansion, urban growth boundary expansion, and about 450 acres of industrial land expansion. It's rather significant. It's about a section of land. Part of the process here is on the comprehensive plan is also really to be proactive in planning, being community-based in our planning efforts. A lot of this work that we're doing is directed by the state of Oregon. They require us to look at a 20-year supply of residential land and a 20-year supply of employment lands. This is all kind of the background story for the department. We have seen a slowdown in permit activity, the interest rates, once they went up, there was a reduction in that, and that's reflected in some of the numbers. The first 2 years I was here, we had pretty much record pace permit levels. Those have decreased probably about half. There's still a lot of activity, however, in the planning department dealing with, even though there is a reduction, there were many platted lots that have not come through our process because developers are slowly metering those out based on the fact that houses are not selling as rapidly. Happy to break down the budget for you on this and answer any other questions that you may have on what we're looking at in our budget.
Councilor Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under professional technical services, I noticed there's quite an increase. Is that the consultant for the comp plan, or is that something else?
It is the consultant for the comp plan, but I'd like to break that down for you. So we have, let me just kind of give the numbers here total. So we started out the work already for the comp plan, and that covers us through this fiscal year. And then next fiscal year, we have $440,318 in the comp plan and transportation system plan update process. There is some additional work that's going to be needed as part of that process to support the urban growth boundary expansion. And those include $30,000, so $15,000 for housing needs analysis to get that through the process, and $15,000 for the economic opportunity analysis, so a total of $30,000 there. And also the state requires us to do housing efficiency measures to do an urban growth boundary expansion as well. And housing efficiency measures are ways the city can encourage more diversification of housing and more affordable housing in the community in order to justify the fact that we're increasing the urban growth boundary expansion, and that'd be another $55,000 there. I also, in addition, that's the comp plan part. In addition to that, there is a series of fairly aggressive House bills that the state of Oregon is about ready to adopt. It's kind of monumental that the state is getting into land use in such a degree. I've not seen this in my career, but we're putting $50,000 into a request to stay ahead of that Oregon state legislation, which deals with things like House Bill 3414, which removes the city's ability to deny variances and to regulate setbacks, unless they're dealing with habitability, and so habitability would need to be defined. And so I put $50,000 in the budget to try to stay ahead of that curve, so that we can hopefully still maintain our local review of applications. I've also put another $15,000 in for I-205 tolling representation, and Joe did a good job of explaining that there is a delay in the tolling process right now by the governor to 2026. I was on a couple calls this week. It's not clear what this all really means on that process. I think we need to stay informed. Mayor Hodson has been super involved on C4, and it's made a huge difference. Part of this is just trying not to be dinged with a lack of mitigation, that ODOT at this point has not provided appropriate mitigation, in our opinion and in the opinion of every jurisdiction in Clackamas County, to address diversion mitigation on our street system off of 99 and the adjacent roadways. So there's another $15,000 in there for that, to get consulting services, specific technical services for that. And that gives the total, the $593,180 all in. I know this is a big ask. We haven't done a lot of long-range planning though, and I think the dividends that this will pay off for the community in terms of planning and visioning. And this is not just the city driving this process. The idea behind this is to have a visioning process with scenario planning, major community involvement in this process. We really want this to be an active participatory process for the city. And so that's the reason for the ask. And these these sums seem fairly significant. They would probably be less had we not waited so long to do the update for the comprehensive plan, which is basically not valuable at all. The current one we have, it's like you're starting over again. And the transportation system plan is a little better in that regard, but we're kind of redoing substantial portions of these documents. If you amortize that cost over 20 years, it's not that much. But I'm just, again, it seems like a lot. I understand it. It's, it is a big ask. I will not be coming back next year for this amount. I can tell you that.
Well, Don, thank you. I
Sure.
have to say that I do appreciate you getting ahead of the legislation that's coming our way and being proactive in actually budgeting for things that unfunded mandates have been a thing for a long time, and we haven't been prepared. So I thank you for getting ahead of that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Councilor Barwick.
Yeah, thank you very much. Don, thanks for that presentation. I really do appreciate it. It's really nice to hear the breakdown on that number. It is a big number and kind of a scary number, but you said you won't come back next year for that number, which I appreciate. 23 and 24, both years are, your department costs more than it makes, which I know we have a lot of fee issues as well that we need to work on. But do you think that next year, or do you think we'll eventually get back to where you cost less than you make?
And part of that is we did do a fee increase with the notion that the intensity of permitting would not drop off. Unfortunately, we were kind of behind the curve on that.
Sure.
Had we, had the years we did the, prior 2 years, I would say we probably would be close to cost recovery. When we did that evaluation, it wasn't a study for full cost recovery, but I think it would bring us much closer to cost recovery. I'm hoping the interest rates come down. Everybody is. It's kind of a big thing for our economy overall. People, commercial and industrial still build when the interest rates are high. On residential, it is a huge damper. And it also makes housing affordability really challenging in this environment. So to answer your question, long answer, sorry. But yes, I think we're going to get much closer once the interest rates start to, I'm assuming they're going to come down, hopefully over the next year.
Great, thank you, Don. I know you guys are doing a lot of heavy lifting, and so I support that. But Eric, maybe this is a question for you. When we have a department that costs more than it makes, where do the funds come from? Do those come from our reserves to pay that difference? And how are we notating our reserves and the depletion of our reserves on this budget? Because I can't remember where I saw it, but I noticed that at one point our reserves were pretty good, and it looks like it's starting to dwindle pretty fast. And so I'm curious how we're documenting our reserves and where are we at percentage-wise on reserves?
Just a second here.
I did notice too on there, and I'm going to try and find it because I did make a note to ask about it. I noticed the reserves showed current reserves, but we're missing a couple years. I know that in 21 and 22, or 20 and 21, I know we had reserves, but it shows a dash on the spot. So are we going to be able to see those numbers again?
Yeah, that's just a formatting thing, like the name changes when we're talking about budget numbers. I can't find the sheet in my packet here. I'm not sure why the reserve numbers are not showing in the general fund.
Page 56, or one of the 56 is in the, towards the front there, it says, right here, fiscal year 21 and 22 doesn't show us our total reserves for future expenditure.
Can you show me?
And then 23, it shows we're at 4 million, but I thought we were.
Page 56. I don't have 56.
Higher than that.
Yeah, these are just the reserves in the general fund. There are, reserves in
other departments.
All the other departments as well. I can bring a more clear sheet about the reserves.
I'd appreciate that, and I would just appreciate to know kind of where we sit at for our reserve balance.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll bring something that's more clear.
Don't we have like a number that we're supposed to be within for good standards or whatever.
Yes,
So,
yeah, I have that in my workbook, but I did not find the information.
okay, thank you.
Counselor Patton.
Yeah, so I think it might be good to add to the parking lot, the request to have like a consolidated number for the reserves for the next meeting so that we can check that. My question was, one of the drums that I have been beating very hard on when I was on the planning commission, and I'm gonna beat it until there's a hole in it, and I'm gonna get a new drum and do it again. Do we need to start putting money in the budgets moving forward to prepare for a major code update, to have like a consultant come in and review our codes once the comprehensive plan and the urban growth boundary expansion is done? Because I would prefer to start socking some money away for that a little bit each year in preparation for that, rather than trying to have one of these big asks cause people's head to spin.
Great point, there's, part of that answer is we are chipping away. Some of this budget, obviously, for housing is addressing some of that, but holistically, you're absolutely correct. We do need to update the entire code, which I don't think has been updated for probably a couple decades. And I think that would be something, as we get into the comp plan, we're going to be able to see policies that will direct. The idea behind the comp plan is you're going to identify policies that will give specifics on direction for, say, transportation, as well as land use in the comprehensive plan. That will direct us then to implementation, which will be in the form of code updates. That's probably out at least probably a year and a half, 2 years out before that happens. But to your point, I think it will be important to maybe break that over several fiscal years. And that would be, the idea behind that. And I mean, these are pretty big lumps, and I don't think the code update will be at that level. Will it be small? Will probably not be small, but it's not going to be the ask we're discussing tonight.
Okay, well, I'm gonna make a note that I'm gonna bring this up again next year, and I would like to see in the budget next year a creation of a line for this in preparation for it.
I will so note that as well.
Okay.
I'm sure you will remind me of that.
He just wants a line, he doesn't need a number next to it.
It just wants a line for it.
No, I want numbers, I want numbers
Be clear, Pat, be clear what you want.
I want numbers in excess of the tens of thousands of dollars in that line.
Jeff?
Of these plans, the comprehensive plan, the transportation plan, how long do they take to get done? And are we going to be looking at budget money next year to finish them up?
This substantially should get us through most of that process. There probably will be I'm assuming there could be an implementation piece of 24, 25, and the order of magnitude on that is going to be much less. I'm assuming that's in less than, $60,000 range. This is probably the range we're looking at. I don't know what that exact number is. Some of this is dependent on, can we get, actually, it's pretty aspirational. There's a ton of work here. I mean, this is a lot going on for all this stuff together. And if they can get it all accomplished, that's great. And if they do, I think we're probably looking in that 50 to 60,000 range for 24, 25.
Okay, so they will not be done this year.
I think it's
well along, but not done.
And the comprehensive plan will be close. We're anticipating that we'll have the comp plan hopefully adopted. And this, again, is dependent on getting it on council and getting through the planning commission. The aspirational goal is to have the comp plan completed by December 2024. That's the goal. So there would be about the first half of 24, 25 that would be needing to be budgeted. It's a little unknown on the urban growth boundary expansion. And part of the reason we're trying to really be specific on the housing needs and the economic opportunity analysis, buildable lands information, is to make sure that we're very tight on that, and that we have the backing of Department of Land Conservation and Development as well. The urban growth boundary expansion, though, however, will be a separate item from the comp plan, so it's not really dependent on, it's not going to be all one thing, but the urban growth boundary expansion may continue past the comprehensive plan adoption. That's to be determined.
Okay, so there's still more steps to this.
There are, but this is the lion's share. This budget will be, you will not see a budget, you can quote me on this, this will not be, you will not see a budget like this next year for this amount. This should take us largely through the lion's share of that.
I wrote it down, Don says no more money.
But it's,
Mr. Chair.
yeah. There's some residual stuff that we need to do, but this should take us through the majority of that. Hopefully, we'll be able to complete everything that's tasked in the scope that the consultant will be charged with doing.
Is the transportation plan on about the same schedule?
It is. They're running concurrently, and again, that was the intent here, is to get them both done together and to be concurrent so that, and they're supposed to be concurrent as well, that your transportation and your land use match.
Okay.
And part of the idea of like pressing all this together is, I don't want to beat up on other cities, but we do not want to do what McMinnville did or Newburgh did in their process that took a decade or longer and millions of dollars because they did not put the steps together correctly and had to redo their housing and economic opportunities, and it delayed them. They also had appeals, et cetera. And that's just, the goal here is to avoid what other jurisdictions have done. I can't guarantee that we won't have challenges on this because UGB expansions in Oregon are challenging. They're difficult. They're very difficult to do. We want to be sensitive to all the issues that relate to those, including, soils, farmland, levels of service and community input. All those things are important. But the idea behind jamming all this together is it does actually save money in the long run as well.
That it? No more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. So next up would be, do we have to do building?
Yeah, let me do that real quick, sorry. Building will be largely a parallel to that. Our role, and just kind of an overview, our role in the building side of things is we do what's called site plan review for the building process. Clackamas County does all the actual building permit review processes. They do the fire life safety of buildings. We review the site plan, which is basically looking at setbacks and the land use elements that are part of that project. So our role in that is somewhat limited. Back in before 2012, we did have a building department here. And there was a downturn, I understood, and so therefore we outsourced that to the county. So the building part of things is continuing, and we have a lot of activities still with site plan reviews, which come through our department, whether it's for a single-family home or a commercial development that's gone through some sort of land use process or multifamily home structure. We go through and we approve the site plan review process. That's where we collect our system development charges before we release those permits. And then the county, we sign off electronically with Development Direct as part of that process, and work closely with the county on that process. So the building side of things is important, but the role of our department is reduced because we are not doing the actual building plans review.
Jack.
Looking at this, we had 0.2 full-time equivalents up until there was budgeted for a full one for 2023, but we only are using 0.3. I guess what I'm asking is do we need that person if Clackamas County is doing a lot of it, or do we still have to do a lot of the work too?
We are, there's a split in terms of what we're getting back from the county on this as well. There's an old agreement that we have. I think part of this is formulaic, and it's historically formulaic on how that split financially. We've done apparently the same formula for 30 years. The county is not doing all of the reviews. We do several hundred of these. I think in our documentation, I think it was in the 300 range of site plan reviews. It's not a small number per year. So, and some of this is, can even be miscellaneous permits. It's maybe for a house or a commercial building or an industrial building. We also do it for sign permits, and other things like that are also part of that review process. So there is a pretty much steady stream of work that goes into that. So I would say we absolutely need all of our staff. And in particular, I would say that at this point in time, if you don't make it a priority, it will not get done. And the history of that is shown where I think previously we just didn't do much long range planning. So we do need all the staff we have. Everyone is pretty busy, and we're also working on the comp plan.
That's it? Counselor Barber.
Yeah, it's done. Just a real quick question, and you don't really have to expand on it. I'm sure it makes sense, and I just don't get it. But budgeted for one, as Jack mentioned, one person at wages of 88,000, only had 0.3, but spent almost the entire salary, 79,000. Is that number correct, or is there?
No. That 0.3 number has to be wrong.
Okay, because I was going to say, it's almost 100% of a one full-time employee wage paid, so 0.3. So can we update that number?
Yes, I got it on my list to update all the FTE numbers there.
Any more? Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
So next up will be Police Chief Trobe.
I'd be happy to share.
That's where I said on the hard questions.
It's not started off.
I was having hard questions.
All right, I'm ready. I have Captain Kitzmiller to back me up, so don't ask too hard. Well, thank you. Thanks for being here tonight. So a couple items of note in our budget. One, I want to touch upon what Joe said earlier about our calls of service increasing. So we looked at 2021 calls compared to 2022 calls, and we knew our calls of service were a lot higher, but we didn't realize that it was 51% higher for 2022. So we had 5,570 calls in 2021, and in 2022 we had 8,435. That's a huge increase. And again, this is not including traffic stops, so that's self-initiated traffic stops by an officer. If we add those into the mix, it's probably another 4,000 calls that officers do. This does include all calls for dispatch and other officer self-initiated activities, or if they're waved down, or if they see something on view like a crash. And Chief Davis, this does not include coffee breaks and donut breaks, okay? Not on there. Anyways, in all seriousness, so an additional officer will really help us respond to the increased call load. Another thing why we're asking for another police officer, right now we have 27 authorized. We do not have 27 right now. We have 26, one in background right now. But since I started 28 years ago, we've had a 2-officer minimum for our shifts. So at all times, we have to have 2 officers on, and that's been the same for 28 years. My goal before I retire is to have 3 officers on all the time. It is difficult to have 2 officers when you count in, when people leave, a vacation, sick time, training, all those things. And 2 officers is not enough. At times, an officer is up at the jail, and we're left here for 1 officer. And if they have a priority call, they either have to wait, because a lot of these priority calls take at least two officers. They have to wait for this officer to come back from jail, or wait for another agency, Clackamas County, Oregon City, or Malala to come back us up. So this will really decrease times to respond to calls. Saturday night, we had 6 officers on, and we didn't have enough. We had 6 DUI arrests, a hit and run, a stolen vehicle, a couple domestics, I don't know what else, but I got called from Sergeant Charlotta that night probably about 6 times. And we had to have officers hold over. So it's just busier. I mean, just things are busier. Highway 99 is bigger. I know Chief Davis emergency calls for service are just up. And it's just one of those things that I think we just have to deal with as a growing city. And the other thing is just what this helps is with just to cover the hiring gap. Like I said, like right now, even though we're authorized for 27, I don't think we've had our full strength for over 10 years. Full strength, just because when people leave, it takes a long time to hire somebody, right? Not only when you first put out that announcement, by the time you hire new background, a psych, a medical, it takes several months just for that. And then they have to go to the academy, and there's a backlog at the academy, and then they have to go to training. So it takes about a year and a half before we get somebody ready to fill that spot. So this will help on that. The other position, you guys all know, I've talked about the code enforcement. It was approved to start that process early by the council, so we actually already had that opening, and we have interviews next Tuesday. Yeah, next Tuesday for that spot. So we're feeling hopeful on that. We have some people with some good experience. The other items of note is just a little bit of increase in our materials and services. All costs have gone up, over the last couple of years. The biggest increase really is our dispatch and our radio fees. Those went up about $25,000. So that was really the biggest increase there. And really, that's about it. So I will open it up to questions on anything. So, yes, Councilor Patton.
I'm just curious if, I know that the behavioral health specialist was brought on with some funds for COVID and such.
The ARPA funds.
Yeah, the ARPA funds. Have you started the process of knitting that into future budgets to retain that position?
So I think Eric can talk, but it is in our budget right now. So that's what you see. So there's not a dedicated just ARPA, but it could be earmarked for ARPA. But it is in our budget.
Yes, the behavioral health specialist shows up in the regular salaries and wages here for the police department. And the ARPA funds can just be earmarked to pay for that through here. So.
Yeah, but the ARPA funds will run out. And then after that, like, if memory serves me correctly, this person was brought on for an understanding of a period of time with those ARPA funds. And then I think there was the discussion that once those ARPA funds have been expended, then we're going to have to sort out how to fund that position from there.
We'll try to just put it in our regular budget.
Okay, so there's a plan to move that forward. Yes. And they're still split between us and the county? Wasn't there some sort of agreement?
No, this is full-time for us.
Full-time, okay, great.
They do assist fire quite a bit, but yes, full-time for the city. Yeah. The other, just one item of note that, so under equipment capital, you see computer software, that went up quite a bit. And what that is, so we have 28,000 for computers, new computers for our cars. We just replace 4 or 5 of them every year, just because they get the old. The other part is in there is we were hoping that when, for the ARPA discussion, there was going to be an ARPA workshop, and we were hoping that for our Axon system, which is our cameras on our bodies and the cameras in the cars, that we could possibly pay for that out of ARPA funds. So we did budget it that way, and because it's a 5-year contract, and we were hoping using ARPA funds, some other departments have done it, is just pay it all off this next year using some ARPA funds. So I think hopefully there's going to be an ARPA workshop later, so that might be a way to pay that off. And that's why we just budgeted in there, because we did not have an ARPA workshop. The other thing that Chief Davis had brought up, we had also, in that ARPA workshop, we're talking about hiring a consultant for emergency management to look over our emergency management plan and see what the city needs. So that's another thing that we'll look at if we have an ARPA workshop.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
I have Lisa first, then the mayor, then.
He just answered.
Okay, so Mayor Hudson.
One of your goals that's listed, Chief, is bringing back 1 or 2 canine units?
So, yeah, so we don't have any canines right now. So we used to have a patrol one, and that one retired. And then we had a drug canine, and with the drug laws, that one retired here last year. That was Sergeant Sharmoda. So we are planning over the next year is to bring back a canine for patrol. And we actually have a few officers actually probably interested in that program. So we're looking probably at the end of the year or really next year.
Okay, because
That's a plan of ours, yeah.
well, I saw that listed as one of your goals, but yet there's no budget, no money in the budget line for it.
Yeah, so really it would just be for actually the purchase and training of a canine when we get there, not an additional officer for canine, it would be an existing officer because they still could do patrol work, so.
Counselor Barwick.
Yeah, my question was the same, but as the mayor mentioned, we don't, police canines line, there's no money dedicated for it. So where is that?
Yes, so
Is that
the
the one
actual
for
purchase
canine
of dogs, it
expenses?
would be the following year, but there's canine for some training up front. And then really the plan is to try to get to full staffing before adding that canine. So we're looking at really next budget year.
Gotcha.
Add the actual dog.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? Jack?
Yeah, do we have a feeling of why we're getting so many more calls? And does it look like it's going to keep continuing growing at this rate?
So our trend, we're looking at the numbers for this year, it's about the same as last year. So we're on trend to either match that or even a little bit more. And, I don't know, it's a good question. I think just, increased, our city is growing, right? Increased traffic, increased events. I know like the fairgrounds has some more events going on. And then I think just after COVID, people are out more. I really do, yeah.
Anybody else? I have one to send you out on a good note. Would donuts and coffee be under fringe benefits? That's a pretty good one.
That is a pretty good one, thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Could you tell me what fringe benefits are?
Eric can, that's a big problem. I think it's just.
I know that you guys get, they get an allowance for boots.
Yes.
Okay.
Uniform cleaning.
Uniform cleaning, yeah, it's in the contract, in the police union contract about buying boots, cleaning uniforms, and,
Get the jelly stains out of the uniform.
yeah.
You guys are terrible.
Horrible physical fitness.
That's why they were black uniforms.
Michelle has a question.
Yes.
So I have a question. About the officers per thousand.
Yeah, so rule of
I've heard one
thumb, no, I'm
here.
gonna tell you, yes, so officers per thousand for the rule, kind of the rule of thumb for Oregon and kind of the West Coast cities our size, 1.5 officers per thousand is what you strive for. East Coast, it's like 3 officers per thousand. They have quite a bit more. We're much more efficient and better trained. Anyways, so right now we currently have, with our current staff and the population, is 1.42 officers per thousand, which is pretty close. But adding this additional officer will get us to 1.47, which is closer to that 1.5. And again, that's kind of a rule of thumb. It does depend on your city and what's going on. But yeah, thanks for asking that. Appreciate it.
If you were to add, like your goal is to have 3 officers
Yes.
minimum per shift, what would that then put you at?
We would have to be, so we would be over the 1.5. Really to make a goal for 3 officers all the time, we would have to add probably an additional 3 officers, additional than the 1. Probably about right. Yeah.
That it? Thank you, Chief Trill.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, Parks and Cemetery. Jerry Nelzine.
I missed this, I can't really look at Parker without the cemetery.
Bringing ramen up
I'll
here.
text you instead.
Sit down.
I was going to share some of Jamie's chocolate. Hi, I'm Jerry Nelson, Public Works Director. How are all of you? Good to see everyone. Parks Department, I'll try to get through this fast. 34 sites, 215 acres that our Parks Department maintains. We had a busy year this year, got some pretty neat new stuff installed, a new shelter at Locust, and completed our first pickleball courts over there at Maple that we've got in here for the 22-23 highlights. Same, just maintenance, mowing, all the good stuff, edging, all that, irrigation, keeping everything going. I do have a close CIP that Jamie could bring up if we wanted to take a look at that, because I know that Lisa Potter wanted to see that, because I think we just need a little bit of tweaking, but I think it's very close. We've actually worked with the Parks Department. It's close to the one that was adopted earlier this year for City Council. And if you can't bring it up, Jamie, that's all right, but we could take a look at it. This year's goals is to keep the main maintenance going on everything else, and then try to get some really great projects done. Let me think. One of them is Maple Street improvements, turf in the infields and lights. Oh, and I think, can you go down a little, Jamie? And it's kind of hard to see, but everything in the column that we're trying to do. And Lisa, Jim, look at this. I think this is pretty accurate from what we went over on the parks.
That's accurate.
Okay.
I
Good.
do have a question. I noticed in the budget, it's 2.6 for Maple Street, but we actually wanted to split that out between 2024 and 2025. So this coming year should only be 1.6, not the 2.6
That is,
for just 2024.
Jeff, what were we doing? We were going to do, we were going to try to do more projects, but the main thing for this year was the 1.6 million for the turfing and the lighting.
Right.
And the path stuff.
Yeah, and there was a couple of other things, Jerry. Canby Kids.
Yep.
I didn't notice that was in here, or am I missing it? Because we had committed, we wanted to commit some funding to support Canby Kids.
Jeff, did we request that?
It's there.
It's on the,
It's on the CIP.
I just didn't know
but
if it's not in the budget.
It's not in the budget.
And I think, Lisa, we forgot to put that in there, didn't we? Might have, we'll have to look through that. We were, yeah, let's, is that too late to add if we do a request?
I mean, the council said, but the
Yeah.
committee says it's fine, we can change it.
I know that it went through, I know that it went through the committee. Was it gonna be a recommendation to council, or were we just gonna, or did that already go through council as a recommendation to do that?
We
I
came,
thought-
we came and talked to council about it, Ryan and I did, that we,
Yes.
the city used to, years ago, the city used to give them $10,000, I think, a year out of budget, and we were hoping that we could go to 15. But we need to start getting them some money again.
So is that something that we, as this group, could recommend putting in here for this budget, or is that something that need to be recommended by council to?
A parking lot item, maybe?
Put in the parking lot.
This parking lot, that
I did.
What?
Am I
what-
hearing the number is 15 though to put in the parking lot? Okay, just so we know, so we
Would that
bring
be
it back.
something that a materials and service, or something could just be added? Or that wouldn't be under capital?
That's right. we can
Okay.
put it up here. What's the Canby Kids that's up there? That's 400 grand. Parks strategic plan and recreational.
That's for the big soccer and all of the sports complex down the road that we're going to try to.
If you guys are going to change this to 2,600.
Well, that's in the CIP to do that, but we budgeted 1.6. Okay. So, I mean, that would be the total complete, that was a total completion of Maple Street Park, but we only budgeted 1.6 million to do Maple. So I don't know, Eric, is it a big deal to not have, I just had it on the CIP just so if they decided to do the whole project, it's eligible for SDCs.
I'm with you, just if the plan on the CIP was to do a 1.6 million and then a 1 million, then we should follow that here, or we should change the CIP to match this.
I think that's what we'll do. We'll put in the CIP before it goes into the budget, the 1.5 under that, and then the million, or the 1.6 and then the other million in the following budget year.
Yes.
Okay, so if we're gonna do that in the CIP, then we should change this number to 1,600,000.
Yep, exactly.
Yep. We'll just do the next million in FY.
Yep, that's perfect, Eric. So the only thing, so what do we need to bring back for the Canby kids? Anything, or are we just gonna talk about that later?
I think we're putting it in the parking lot to start the next meeting.
Okay. Okay, the other projects that we're trying to do for parks is the fitness court at Legacy Park. And the Simnett Dodd is in there right now. We've got our contractor looking into building a master plan for that. So if we get that done in time, we got 1.5 million in there that we could start on the Auburn Farms Simnett property park. And am I missing anything?
Yes.
The off-leash dog park, that's our next thing. We're gonna get a contract with our engineer to try to get something going on that, to look at different locations on it. And we also need to finish the SDC portion of the master plan this year, so you'll see some money left in there. We want to get that all finished up. What else am I? And then $200,000 for the fuel station down at Public Works. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
And for the parks portion of that fuel station of the $1 million.
Councilor Hensley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jerry, I'm actually thinking this question may actually be for Eric, whichever one of you can answer this. I'm looking at the resources revenue portion. I'm not seeing the FEMA dollar refunds. Where are we with that? Did we get those FEMA refund monies, or is that lost?
The ice storm money?
Pardon?
Was that the ice storm?
For the ice storm.
This is just parking.
I don't know where that is exactly, but I know I can find it and bring it back and tell you where it's at.
We can have that next week?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Nobody has to be in the parks fund.
Well, a lot of the parks
Councilor
money,
Patton.
a lot of the money is
So,
spent in
sorry, I stepped
trees
out
and
real quick.
parks, right?
I believe one of these projects is the turfing, is the turfing of the fields in here, correct?
That is Maple Street Park renovation.
So my question is, I believe that a lot of the expense of turfing those fields is gonna come out of SDCs because it's new infrastructure, correct?
Correct.
Those fields are gonna have to be replaced every 8 to 12 years. And so what is the parks, what is the plan to start setting money aside every year in the budget to prepare for the huge cost of both replacing all of that turf and then disposing of it? Because my suspicion is it's a pretty big chunk of money.
Yeah, we appreciate you bringing that up, because that's been a huge concern of Jeff Snyder's, just to make sure that we can, because that's fine, the SDC stuff, build stuff, but it doesn't maintain it. And so that is something that we've talked to them. We've had a lot of conversations about that with the Parks Advisory Committee, with the people that are putting the turf in, and there's a lot of different methods to make it last longer, but we are gonna have to look into this. Jason,
Jeff, do you want to talk, or do you want me to say something?
Right ahead, Scott.
We talked in our meetings, turf, when they are turf, there's going to be a rental fee. So that rental fee can go, some of it can go back to budgeting for the next time we go around when we have to put turf in.
Well, yeah, but there would then need to be a line added into this budget where that money is starting to be allocated to, so it doesn't get used for a toilet or something, right? So that, I guess that is like a parking lot item for me. And I'm making a note in my little widget here for next year to make sure that the drum is being beat. Where is the turf money? Where is this year's installment of turf money?
And that's going to be some meetings, because you're going to have Canby kids, you're going to have softball, and you're going to have baseball. So they're all going to have to come together to figure out a system for that. So.
Well, yeah, as far as how much am I going to pay in towards the process?
Yep.
But that money is going to be coming into the city to be set aside. So we need to make sure to add that.
Thanks for bringing that up, Jason.
Right.
Same question, Scott.
Yes.
I just had to ask
You're
about
on.
the bathrooms in the community park. Are they in here somewhere, or I don't know?
Yes, they're actually right now being, that's an urban renewal project.
Oh, okay.
So we'll talk about that later. I think it might be funded out of something different later. I'm not sure, but we can talk about that when we get to it.
Thank you.
Were you suggesting that the turf rental fee money be like a restricted account? That the turf rental cash is only used for a specific thing?
Yeah.
Placement and maintenance. yeah.
Maintenance.
To go to police radios.
Yeah.
Huh? Is that like crazy? Am I crazy for asking?
No,
Okay.
I just want to make sure I'm clear.
I don't think George heard.
Eric.
You heard me, okay?
I'm just curious, so if the dog park may still happen in some form, how come I don't see the funds in here for 2024?
Yeah, that's, what we will do is we will vet the locations, and get some design work estimates, all that, and then it would go into the following budget cycle. So it wouldn't make this year with all the projects.
So it would have to be approved again then by the council? In a sense, like,
Well, right now,
because it's been approved.
What's the best way
You're
to-
saying it would have to be approved again.
how do I not?
You could just say that it's on hiatus. I mean,
Yeah,
you know my
we're-
thoughts.
It's still,
It's been killed.
okay.
Joe, what do you think?
So the proposal is to actually go back to the Parks Advisory Board and have them sort of vet it. They will use experts to kind of look at different things as much as they can. And then if there is a need, there is contingency and things like that that can be utilized. You can always even do a supplemental budget. But I believe that process, along with all of the endeavors that the Parks Department is trying to get accomplished, you only have so much bandwidth. So the realistic answer is the dog park won't be, even if it's starting to get vetted and we have a very active Parks and Rec Advisory Board, the realistic answer is it won't be built until the following fiscal year at least.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
So to confirm that we don't want to like protect those funds or keep them set aside, or those are going away. Is that what you're saying?
If they weren't spent, they're carried over into the general fund, and we're gonna bring to you as one of our items, the preserve number, so you'll get to see that money's still there. Okay.
Counselor Pat.
Yeah, so I will just point out that, you know, we've been talking about this dog park for almost a decade now. It's been revived and the paddles have been put on it 3 times. And I think we spent as much money vetting sites and re-looking at it as we could have to just build the darn thing. So, you know, that's my concern. I'm hoping that it either gets done in the next budget cycle, and if not, then we kill it and we move on, because it just is crazy.
Counselor Davis.
Yeah, Eric, I know that the Urban Renewal Commissioner is going to send a note to the mayor to discuss.
They already did.
Yeah, to discuss the overage at Community Park. I know that it's about $367,000 over budget. And that wasn't caused by poor budgeting at the, let's see, how do we put this? At the public works side, it was lowered by somebody else. But anyway, that's what caused the overrun for Community Park. But we should capture that amount in the budget somewhere once the city council addresses that issue to reimburse the urban renewal district.
Yeah. How does that work?
Scott.
Because we need to put that in.
So you could, the options at the disposal of the council are, if the council wanted to use restricted funds like SDCs, you could, right, for if it's capacity increasing, and that's on our capital improvement project list. So that's an option. And then So urban renewal funds don't necessarily have to be spent on that, and if the urban renewal budget, which you guys will see soon enough, if you only want to allocate a certain amount, then it kind of gets punted to the city to make a decision on whether or not, which funds they would like to use to make up that difference, or if the urban renewal agency so saw fit, they could, allocate the whole amount, if that helps.
Councilor Patton.
I think with that amount of money that we are going to talk about possibly transferring, would that be something that could be done with this current budget as part of the supplemental budget and not mess with this new budget for next year? Because I think that's something that we'd be able to do. We'd be able to I envisioned we'd be able to tackle that before getting to the next fiscal year. Is that reasonable?
I just want to make sure that I understand this right. You guys are talking about community park, right?
So what happened was there was an overrun for the community park and we funded the whole thing from urban renewal.
Right.
But there was an overage of $300 and some odd thousand. And so the urban renewal district has requested to the city council to reimburse them for that unplanned overage. And so the city council would be finding money in its budget to then reimburse the urban renewal district that amount. I figured we would be able to tackle that in this fiscal year rather than our current budget fiscal year.
Right. Yes, we can totally do that.
So along those, I'm sorry, I have one other follow-up with that. There's been talk of either using SDCs or general fund money for that.
Or ARPA, I guess. Is
or ARPA funds, yes. So
we requested 110,000 of ARPA for part of it.
Correct. So I know with SDC funds, they are more restricted. Is there, like, because we are reimbursing another district for an expense that has been incurred, would the city council be allowed to transfer those SDC funds to that? Or because it's not going directly to the thing, is that tied up in the restriction is a question I have.
I don't know that exactly, but I could work with Jerry to work with Kurt to figure out what the restrictions are on those SDC fees.
That'd be great.
What's eligible for improvement, yeah.
Because the last thing I would want to do is have the group start to talk about this and then get down the path and be like, oh, you can't actually do that. It has to all come from general.
It's definitely eligible for SDC because of the expansion of the parking lot and adding a whole nother bathroom.
Okay.
So, and upgrading the sewer and stuff like that. I think we could meet that if you guys were wanting to do SDC fees for the remainder of that, where it was over budget. But we'll check on that so we have something official.
Yeah, it was just a thought that came to mind the other day while I was brushing my teeth.
But that is the direction we're wanting to go, is out of SDCs, correct?
Well, no, we're not going to have that discussion at some other time. I just wasn't sure.
You think about this when you brush your teeth?
Oh, you bet.
We need to, like, before our next budget meeting.
No, I think that would.
I think we should hammer it out now in the budget process and be clean and done.
We could move forward then.
Like today, or I thought.
Parking lot for next week.
Okay.
Councilor.
Housekeeping question. Typically, we've adjourned at 8:30. Are we planning to do that
I
tonight?
was just going to see if
Okay.
everybody, how long they want to go. I kind of went down to transit room fund to see if we could get that far. I don't think we're going to get that far. So how about if we take a, does anybody
No
take
break.
a little break?
I had one more thing.
Yeah, cemetery.
And on parks, real quick, the master plan, I believe, was recommending 3 additional employees. I talked with our last city administrator, Scott Archer, and he said, let's start with 1. And then we budgeted for a part-time, like a parks professional for recreation, to maybe get some recreation going. So that's the employees that we're requesting.
Okay.
And then, do you want to stop or do cemetery real quick?
Do cemetery, yep.
So nothing fancy. The people out at the cemetery are doing an amazing job. As you guys see, it's beautiful. It's great. The only thing new or out of the ordinary, because I'm sure someone's going to ask, I'll just say it, that we had our used lift that we bought in 1989 for putting the caskets in the mausoleum finally gave up. And so we had to do a quick rush on that and bought a new one in there, and you'll see it's over for it was around $34,000, and it was under the tools and equipment line item. And so we got a good run out of that last one. This last one hopefully lasts us as long. So other than that, any questions for the secretary?
I wish I had one just in honor of Parker, but I don't.
Okay. Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, guys.
So how's everybody feel about doing a couple more, or do we need a break, or?
Let's go to 8:30.
No, let's not do a break. I think, yeah,
Go to
let's just go
let's go
through.
to
I mean, we
8:30
have the
and-
swim center guy here, so if we
Okay.
power through, we might be able to get through that if we hurry. Oh, and, well, transit is, swim center comes after transit.
Next up is economic development, so that would be Jamie.
So, Chair, if I may, while they're resetting.
Counselor Patrick.
I know we normally like shove this all in 2 days, but judging by the way things are going, it might be good for people to block out this June 1st on their calendar, because my suspicion is this is going to take 3 days.
I believe you're correct.
And I will just say this as the past chair, I am loving it. Like, I sometimes feel like we just ram through this budget every year to try and fit it into 2 days. And I am really excited about the conversation and all of that's going on. So I really appreciate that. And if it means going an extra day, I'm here.
Do I get extra pay for that extra day?
You do. We'll get you.
You get double what you get now.
I will buy you a whole bag of
Let's
M&Ms.
have 4. So what would the next date be? Would it be the
June
same
It would be
third-
June 1st. It would
That's a
be,
Thursday also?
it would be a Thursday, yeah.
I'd support that.
Everybody okay on that?
Yeah. We haven't missed C4, but we've done that. Are they having C4 because of the retreats last weekend?
No, because of the retreat that
Now,
week.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not putting that in the parking lot.
No, that's okay.
No, I think that's a good.
You're
that's a
doing
prudent
great,
move.
Scott.
And we'll make sure and let Maya know. She isn't here tonight, but we'll have to make sure and advertise that too, so.
Okay, so we're ready. Do we need Eric back?
I think Jamie,
I think I
You're good? Okay.
Yeah. Jamie Stickle, Economic Development Director. Good evening, everybody. And it is not lost on me that I brought the M&Ms, but that Public Works presented them. So I'm sure they'll get extra credit points for my good behavior. The Economic Development Department promotes Canby as an attractive business location, supports local businesses, and recruits new companies, development, and investment. We operate as Canby Business, so if you see us on social media or our branding as Canby Business, we support retailers, coordinate events to attract visitors, manage programs to revitalize buildings and street environments, and promote downtown. And my apologies, I noticed earlier this week and told Eric that my headings had not been updated. So 2022-23, we had brought on a new economic development and tourism coordinator and continue to oversee or onboard that individual who oversees Main Street efforts, which focuses on small downtown development, tourism marketing, and city-sponsored events. We coordinated and executed communication efforts with the planning department on that long-range planning efforts. Don and his team are very capable and very detail-oriented, and so we help to support those efforts by communicating with many of our boards and committees, the community at large, and use the platforms that we have to do so. We completed the Certified Local Government Grant, which is for our Heritage and Landmarks Commission, which included a reconnaissance level survey, which takes a look at the building and says it was built in this year, these are the materials used, this is if it's contributing to the historical nature or not. And a historical context for the Fairgrounds Event Center, and then a residential area in North Canby. All of our city events came back this past year, which is something we're extremely proud of. Independence Day, the Big Night Out Street Dance, the Canby Spectacular Village, Light Up the Night, and the expanded First Thursday Night Market, which happens year-round. We completed the 2022 hotel development analysis, which was an addendum to the 2019 hotel analysis. We used Johnson Economics, and that is as a tool to recruit a hotel to Canby, which, as you can see in our goals for this year, is one of the things that we're working on. And then we continue to do outreach and coordination with industrial park businesses, and that included Shimatsu's 25th anniversary celebration. Shimatsu was one of our first industrial businesses, and myself and Councilor Hensley were able to speak at that event. It was widely attended by their staff, which was really incredible. Oftentimes we see these events, they bring in the public or they bring in their shareholders, and this was really focused on celebrating the company and celebrating its staff. One of the items that was not underway when this was written, but something that I wanted to note because you'll see that it's in our budget again this year, the Community Enhancement Grant, which was a grant to enrich and enhance Canby in a variety of different ways. It was open to businesses, nonprofits, neighborhood associations, among other groups. And then our goals for this year, as I said, hotel development is something that we're working on. We have been also coordinating with the Chamber of Commerce on that. We would like to continue to foster a supportive, business-friendly environment with our outreach, communication, and coordination. Maintain strong partnerships with the Chamber of Commerce, Kiwanis Historical Society, and more. And one of the things I was thinking about that also has happened since the narratives were submitted was a meeting that we held on April 27th. We had the behavioral health specialist and other police officers. We had the Chamber of Commerce, Canby Fire, and then local businesses were all invited to attend a meeting to talk about safety and the changing landscape that we've seen with people who are experiencing houselessness or those with mental health or addiction issues. So it was a really great roundtable. We had several presenters from our various organizations and fielded lots of great, thoughtful questions. Much of the budget for this year is continued efforts as normal. As I mentioned, last year our events came back, and for the first time for a full year since COVID. And some of those events have increased in cost, as you can imagine. Everything seems to have increased in cost. But I think that because we have a full year under our belt with the new economic development and tourism coordinator, we are able to better budget this year and more accurately budget. Some of those items that we were included, for example, in the Independence Day expenses, we were able to work with our businesses that we use year after year to get accurate representation. So we think that we're going to be pretty close with this budget. Overall, it changed not very drastically. The biggest change from last year and it's included this year is that Community Enhancement Grant. And we closed that on Friday, May 12th. And then, of course, the way that this always works, someone learned about the grant afterwards. And so one of the things that we're really excited about is to be able to continue that grant as word continues to spread so that we can hopefully infuse more into the community. And I'd be open to questions if you have any.
Mayor Hodson. Speaking of that grant program, so if we had anybody apply for the grant here in this fiscal year?
Yes, we did. And we'll be reviewing those applications next week. Okay. We got several different applications, some from local nonprofits, local businesses with new ideas. It's been interesting to see just a brief overview of what people have thought of. They really thought outside of the box. One of the things that was really important when creating that grant, and I know our city council, along with you, Mayor, they wanted to see that it was for things that happen inside of Canby. So there are lots of businesses and nonprofits that serve the area outside of Canby but happen to be housed here, or there's businesses and nonprofits that serve the area in Canby. But it was about keeping the money in Canby, enhancing our local. It could be a neighborhood association that wants to bring together their neighborhood and provide some offerings and gatherings, as long as it enriched and enhanced Canby overall. So it had to be open to the public. So.
Okay, no, that's okay. And that, when we were talking about Canby Kids earlier, to me it would seem that Canby Kids could take advantage of this particular grant program versus pulling 15,000. I mean, or great, they get only some funding, but we can make up the other funding out of, if that's the case, because right, we used to do, I think Jason and I were just on the council, and that was when we backed out of doing Canby Kids, the Historical Society. Like, we had a whole litany of different groups that we had in our budgets for funding, and so I just caution, if we go to do Canby Kids, then are we opening up to revisiting that with other organizations that need support, so.
And one of the
cautionary
things with
piece.
that grant, there was a cap, which is certainly something that we can revisit this year, was the pilot program. There was a cap of $2,000, and I know that when they came before council, they had asked for 15. So obviously there's that discrepancy, but that's something that we could revisit, and maybe it's that half of it goes to these smaller grants, and maybe there's half that is open to larger organizations that have various impacts. That's definitely something.
Well, one of the things I think you do very well, Jamie, is that you pivot well when there's new programs introduced. And so I think, yeah, once you guys get a year or two underway, it'll course correct, or there will be those kind of recommendation pieces. If the full amount is not used this year, is it rolling over into the next budget year? Do we have that, or are we using all of it?
I don't think that we have enough grants to use all of it at this time. The way the grant was written is that we could reopen it, and actually, as I was thinking about my remarks for this evening, I was thinking that it could be that we even reopen it with some minor modifications as soon as next week, so that then we could see if someone hadn't applied, and then use the end amount to fund some additional projects for people who hadn't. It's a relatively straightforward grant application. I believe there's 5 questions total. One of them is explain the financial need, explain the impact that you plan to have in Canby. And so it's something that we could say, you know, if you have applied in this fiscal year, you're not able to apply again. However, the remaining funds will be used. And then that way, those other organizations were able to, or businesses were able to fund.
Councilor Barwick.
Thank you, Chair. Jamie and Eric, I know we had a conversation last night at our renewal meeting and city council meeting about some of these things, and so it's probably not a surprise that I'm going to ask these questions. And I apologize if I take us past 8:30 mark, but first of all, I'm curious, in 2023, we budgeted $350,000 to be transferred from urban renewal, and we ended up transferring $420,000. So I'm wondering, what is the $70,000 overage? Why did we go over budget by $70,000?
That is an excellent question. I do not have an answer for you right this moment.
Okay, I imagine if we're going to spend an extra $70,000, having an answer that would be pretty important. So if you could please have that at the next meeting, I would really appreciate that. Because I think we as a we have to answer back to the renewal agency why we're spending the money that they're transferring in. I also noticed in our 24 budget, economic development revenue is $11,000, and there's going to be another $425,000 brought over from urban renewal. So essentially, urban renewal, and I did mention this last night, is supporting the economic development department. I believe it is. Nearly 100%. Correct? Mm-hmm. So my question then, as the chair of the urban renewal agency as well, I'd be remiss not to ask, are the dollars being spent in economic development restricted to the urban renewal district? And if not, why not, if urban renewal is supporting the economic development department? I guess one of the questions would be, the grants that we're giving out, are those restricted to urban renewal boundaries?
Yeah.
No. So those are actually grants from urban renewal to businesses, not from economic development, correct? If urban renewal is supporting this department.
I don't have that journal entry here, and I don't remember which things were excluded. Do you remember we looked at the materials and services, and at the very bottom there were certain line items that were excluded from the transfer? I don't remember what those exact lines were.
Well, unless it's under $11,000, everything is, only $11,000 is excluded from the transfer. Because your budget here says total economic development revenue is $11,000. So the rest of the budget is supported by urban renewal.
Right, like there were, I remember the Main Street General Fund one, that line was excluded from the transfer.
And that's what we use for our events, marketing, those kinds of things. But then sorry to interrupt, but then the Main Street UR allowable, those are for harder costs that are, I don't know all of the ones that off the top of my head, but those are things that are more specific. They're not the fun aspects of economic development, they're the harder costs of economic development.
Okay. Oh, I see down here, the total economic is 681, so there's more coming from the general fund than just from economic development. I guess my big question, and you answered one of them, why there was 2 Main Streets on there, but the big question that I want us to be asking as a budget committee over the next 2 years is, can our economic development department sustain itself once the urban renewal agency closes? The answer to me looks like no, it can't, and it's an important department to have, so I'd like to see how we can fund that moving forward. I'd like to see numbers looking forward.
Well, remember last night when we looked at the URD, we looked at how the city and the swim levy was going to get about $1 million more of property tax revenue than we do right now when the URD closes.
Right, but I'd like for this committee, and that's what I'm saying, is I'd like for this committee to start looking at those numbers of how we are going to support economic development in 2026 and beyond once the urban renewal district closes.
Agreed.
So, and then I guess I want to go back to figuring out if transferring almost $500,000 is an appropriate transfer from the urban renewal, or if this should be supported, if more of this should be supported through other funds as well versus urban renewal.
Right. I can't really speak to the policy part of that, but I'm happy to provide any information, financial information to help the people that are, on the policy part make a decision.
Yeah, I just think that question is going to come up again in the urban renewal and of why we're putting so much over. Can we quantify the amount of money that we're spending from urban renewal to economic development?
Yep.
So that we know that, it's being used for urban renewal.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
So if urban renewal is paying $425,000, urban renewal should get $425,000 worth of goods and services.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Totally. I don't know how we'll go about looking at that, but do you have a suggestion on that? Or does anyone else?
Like quantifying that number?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess figuring out how many hours of economic development time is used for urban renewal stuff, and we should track that, right? Because if, at the end of the day, what I'm worried about is we're going to come up and say, urban renewal gave us $425,000, but they got $200,000 worth of our time and services.
Right.
And then we stole $200,000 from urban renewal that could have been used to pay back debt service. It could have helped close the district earlier, could have helped other taxing districts.
Projects. Yep. Okay.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you. Jamie, thank you for the presentation. Jamie's been doing just for the rest of the budget committee, Jamie's been doing a remarkable job working together with the Chamber of Commerce. And where you build partnerships, it's more, reinstituting the tourism committee, the joint tourism committee with the Chamber of Commerce to increase business, especially for the downtown businesses and businesses within Canby. So great job with that, Jamie. We've been doing a lot of work together with the Chamber of Commerce and bringing together the city's goals and the chamber's goals. And so that's a great partnership that Jamie's been working on with the chamber. So thanks for the work on that.
Jack, do you have a question?
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess this goes to the questions we're asking about when we close the urban renewal and the money we're investing in economic development. Do we have any kind of method or way to evaluate what we're getting back in return for the money that we're investing in economic development? Do we have any kind of method to evaluate that?
In the URD report that was presented last night to the Urban Renewal District, there's a sheet in there that talks about how each taxing district within the URD, how much property tax revenue they will be receiving once the URD closes.
I would be happy to send that to all of the budget committee members, the presentation from last night that gives that overview of those numbers, as well as one of the things which might be in line with what you're thinking is the return on investment that we've seen over time, which is Eric took the number of 3% growth since the district started, then took what the property assessment is currently, and then has a great slide on that, and I believe it's $213 or $216 million.
Okay, yeah, that would be very interesting to see. Yeah,
yes,
thank you.
Absolutely.
And just to piggyback on Jack's thing, it might be good at our next, when we go to the urban renewal budget meeting section, that the folks, that the citizen members, we go back through that document for these folks here, so they get a chance to see that. I think that might be good too.
So just as an example, like I took the fire district, and if you just do a 3% growth from 2002 to 2004 to 2022, and you just do a 3% growth, that's a 75% increase in revenue. But with the URD, it was 1,029% increase in revenue. So.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see that, to see the payback we're getting here, so, because we are really working to get this done. It's just interesting to see that. Thank you.
And I would say this because we've been around long enough. You've done several studies about local businesses and such too, and I believe the number, because this is out of kind of the Main Street lore, is that something like the Dahlia project that urban renewal money went into. They say for every person who lives downtown, they spend $8,000 more in the local businesses. So there's theories like that too, where it's not just the property values that increase, but I know the project and the idea is to grow at, everything so that people are spending more and hearing all that. So.
Everybody good? Thank you, Jamie.
Actually, I have a couple of questions. So this one I have noticed, and I may have been sidetracked when we first started, and you may have covered this, but I've noticed that in all of these different departments, under the internal charge for tech services, the amount in what was budgeted for in the case of economic development, last year we budgeted $15,987. We are projected to spend that $15,987, but for the next fiscal year, it's only going to cost $9,404. How is that even possible? Like
for tech services?
Yeah, so like if you go through all the different funds, it's under materials and services.
Yeah.
Internal charge tech services. It's and all of them are like this. They say the original budget amount matches what is going to be spent.
Yes.
But then next year's budget is considerably less than what it would be. How is that even possible?
Danny, just correct me if I'm wrong, but last year we had 2 full-time employees, plus we still had some consulting time. We had 2.5 employees last year, plus some consulting time. This year we only have 2 employees budgeted for in IT. So the wages and salary and the consulting fees are much lower. So there wasn't as much money spent because one of the we didn't have the 2.5 full-time employees for the whole year, so there was savings with that. So the savings rolls forward into a beginning balance for the IT fund for 2024, which reduces the amount of money required to support the fund.
Okay, so you're essentially banking some of what wasn't spent this year to help reduce the cost for all the departments next year.
That's right, and the consultant isn't in FY24, and the half-time employee's not in there. So the overall cost is just lower.
Okay. And then the last thing I just wanted to say, and this is, I'm going to put this on the parking lot. I'd like to put this on the parking lot. We talk about grants a lot, and I think, and there are a number of people on staff that know how to do grant writing, but they are doing a lot of other stuff and they can't do grant writing. I think it might be wise for the city to start to investigate getting either a full-time grant writer on staff or contracting with a company that specializes in grant writing, because I really think that a lot of the work that we're trying to do in the city could be funded through grants like sidewalks and that sort of thing. And I would like to see us start to get our fair share of the government's money to help supplement these projects and make Canby a more livable place for its citizens. So that's something I'd like to see.
I would agree with that.
I would agree with that.
Yep.
Parking lot items.
One last question. Did we reach out to Chantel for a grant, to apply for this grant for Canby Kids?
I believe she was on the email list. I also sent to Ryan Oliver.
Yep.
I think first as the parks, part of the Parks Board, but then specifically about the Canby Kids.
Okay.
And I cannot recall if we got.
I think we did, but I wanted to make sure that, yeah, so, okay. Anybody else for Jamie?
Just one thing.
Eric?
Yeah, after kind of hearing everyone talk, this is one department, one area that definitely speaks to me, because in addition to being a citizen, I'm also a business owner here, so I'm very connected with the city, as well as running and being part of a nonprofit here, and it's trying to improve the livability of Canby. So I don't know what the purview of the URA is or what the rules are, because I'm not on that committee, but if it's not going to be funded by URA business development, then it needs to be funded by the city. I think just as importantly as every other department, we got to figure it out. Why? Because I think you have a longer list of goals than just about any other department, and business is the heartbeat of any town. I've talked to numerous business owners who are just hanging on. One just closed or announced their closing, Team Spirit. I know others are in the process of, like, they're a month away from closing or relocating. So the business community in Canby, I think, is struggling and needs support. And however we get that through grants, more things like that, but definitely need more support to align also with the city goals. I think in terms of the proof of the work they're doing, to Jack's point, we haven't really asked of any other department, but I think the proof is just attend one of the events. There's your proof. Talk to the business owners, but I think it's a little unfair to say proof what you've done with that money, but we're not saying that to any other department. So I just want to go on the record with that. And then lastly, regarding the chamber, it's been pretty bumpy. I've been a business owner now for almost 2 years and fourth director in the 2 years I've been there. So it has not been great for downtown business owners, and we've had lulls where there was no director. So I do think everyone should be aligning, absolutely. Rotary, all the people that are trying to make the city better, but yeah, I just want to make sure we're using those funds wisely and try to find ways to get you guys more funds and resources so we can really kind of take this to the next level.
Eric, just so you know, that's precisely the reason I bring it up, is because I want to make sure that we are talking about it so that we can continue this department when that URA closes, because it is a very vital and important department. And we have to continue that. And I just don't want to get stuck later on going, wait, how do we fund it? And then have to lose it. Right?
And, to Jason's point, I heard the city of Newburgh, they have a great online presence, great traffic. Well, they got there because they got a group of people that went out and they just wrote for every grant possible and got a ton of money, really professional marketing, and now they're a hot spot in Charlton. And so that's all.
Well, and just to add to that, it's one of the things that we're a small department, but we're very mighty. We try desperately to work with those partners that we have in the community, whether things are bumpy or things are great, in the good times and the bad times. I feel really lucky specifically to work with all of the different departments who are here and their staff. And so, when I say I'm proud of staff, I don't just mean the one person that reports directly to me, but as a City of Canby director who works with many of the staff members, many of our volunteers, shop local. It really does make a huge impact in our community. And I'll say it every day. You'll see me and you'll hear me, but I appreciate your words and your sentiment, and we're always trying to do better, so thank you.
Councilor Davis.
Yeah, Eric, you bring up some really good points, and that's exactly why we have a joint tourism committee now working on common goals. And Jamie's goals in here for getting a hotel motel, and possibly not only one, but two. We're promoting that very highly because of all the activities that are happening in Canby. We can't keep people in town. And we need to keep people in town to spend money in Canby. And that's critical. And those are the type of joint goals that the chamber and the city are working on, probably more so now than I've seen in the past.
Anybody else? Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you all for your time. Thank you, Jamie.
So I think we should adjourn. Do we need to have
Recess.
a
We need recess.
recess?
Recess.
Thank you. I hope I did okay. I hope I didn't embarrass anybody or myself.
You did good.
Great job.
Next meeting's the 25th at 6 o'clock, correct?
Yes.
And we were going to have a third, but we'll talk about that the next meeting. Is everybody happy the way it's went so far?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.